AITA for freezing my credit after my wife used my home as collateral for her ex's failing business. I'm Brandon, 40, and I had been married to Claire for 9 years when all of this started. Money had never been a forbidden subject in our marriage. We weren't one of those couples who avoided looking at the joint account until a payment bounced. Every Sunday evening, I sat at the desk in the small room we used as a home office, checked the account, paid whatever wasn't on autopay, and clipped loose receipts under a magnet on the filing cabinet until I had time to scan them. Claire used to find it funny. "You know the electric company isn't building a criminal case against us, right?" she would say, leaning against the doorframe with a mug in her hand. "I like knowing where things went. You like interrogating $12 purchases. And yet the lights stay on." She would roll her eyes, smile, and sometimes sit beside me while I worked. For most of our marriage, my habits made her feel secure. Nothing was late. We had emergency savings. We knew what we owed. We weren't wealthy, but we were stable. I will admit that I could be rigid. If a major purchase was involved, I wanted numbers. I wanted to compare terms. I wanted a night to think before committing. Claire was more comfortable deciding quickly and fixing details later. That difference had caused arguments before, but never anything we couldn't resolve. Then she started pushing for a home equity loan. The roof did need work. There was a stain in the corner of the upstairs hallway that became slightly darker after heavy rain, and the heating system had made an ugly rattling sound through most of the previous winter. Those problems were real, which is why I didn't dismiss her when she brought up borrowing against the house. She stood at the kitchen counter one morning with several pages spread in front of her. "We should stop patching things and handle everything at once," she said. "Roof, heating, the old medical balance, maybe the credit card." I poured coffee and looked at the pages. They appeared to be online estimates, not actual contractor bids. "How much are you thinking?" "Enough to stop living with temporary fixes." "That's not a number." She sighed. "Around $75,000. I set down the coffee. "For the roof and heating?" "And consolidation. Maybe some other things." "What other things?" "Brandon, this is exactly what I mean." "What do you mean?" "You turn every conversation into an audit." I picked up one of the pages. It showed a general cost range for roof replacement. No contractor name. No inspection date. No address. "I'm not saying no," I told her. "Show me repair estimates. Show me the terms, and we'll talk." Her face changed. Not dramatically. She didn't yell or throw anything. She just looked tired in a way that made me feel as though I had failed some test I hadn't known I was taking. "With you, trust always comes after paperwork. Anything secured by the house should come after paperwork. It's our house." "Exactly." She gathered the pages, tapping them into a neat stack harder than necessary. "I'm tired of living like every decision needs your approval stamp." "That isn't what I said. It's what you always say, just with more numbers." She left the kitchen before finishing her coffee. Over the next 2 weeks, the loan became less about repairs and more about whether I trusted her. Whenever I asked for contractor names, she said she was still comparing them. When I asked what interest rate the lender had quoted, she said the final rate depended on both of us completing the application. When I asked to see the loan packet, she told me it was all in progress and there was nothing useful to review yet. At night, she spent more time on the shared computer in the office. If I came in, she would minimize windows or close the laptop we kept on the side table. Once, I walked in carrying a basket of clean laundry and saw an email open on the screen. I only caught a few words before she closed it. "Who's that from?" I asked. "The loan processor." "What did they say?" "Nothing important yet." "Can I see it?" She stared at me. "Do you hear yourself?" "I'm asking to see an email about a loan that would be in both our names." "You're looking for a reason not to trust me." "No, I'm looking for the documents you keep saying exist." She pushed past me with the laptop tucked under her arm. 2 days later, her mother left me a voicemail. "Brandon, this is Diane. Claire is embarrassed that you won't let her fix her own house. A marriage is not a bank audit. My daughter should not have to beg for a safe roof. You need to think about what this constant control is doing to her." I listened to it twice. Not because I enjoyed it, because several phrases sounded exactly like Claire: control, audit, safe roof. I saved the voicemail and didn't respond. That night, I asked Claire whether she had spoken to Diane about our finances. She was cutting vegetables at the counter and didn't look up. I talked to my mother. "Did you tell her I refused to fix the roof?" I told her I felt trapped. That wasn't my question. She put down the knife. You track every dollar. You make me justify everything. You won't agree to anything unless I present it like I'm defending a thesis. What word would you use? I'd use cautious. Of course you would. I never said we couldn't repair the house. You make saying yes so exhausting that it might as well be no. That one stayed with me. I knew there was some truth in it. I could drag decisions out. I could make emotional conversations sound like budget meetings. There had been vacations we didn't take because I wanted another month to compare prices, furniture Claire stopped asking for because I wanted to research durability, and projects that sat half-finished while I tried to avoid paying too much. I was willing to own that. I was not willing to sign a loan I hadn't read. The call came on a Wednesday afternoon. I was in the home office sorting insurance statements when my phone rang. The number belonged to the bank we used for the mortgage, so I answered. Is this Brandon? A woman asked. Yes. My name is Julia. I'm calling regarding the home equity application associated with your property. I need to complete a consent verification. My first thought was that Claire had finally moved the application far enough that I could review it. Okay. Julia confirmed my date of birth and part of the loan number. Then her tone became more careful. I need to verify that you understand the property will secure obligations connected to the business entity listed in the collateral support addendum. I stopped moving. What business entity? There was a pause. The company referenced in the addendum is registered to Ryan. I knew only one Ryan connected to Claire. Her ex-boyfriend. According to Claire, he had been out of her life for years. I leaned back in the chair and looked at the filing cabinet, the receipts under the magnet, the ordinary little room where we had handled 9 years of shared expenses. I think there's a problem, I said. Julia didn't react like someone in a movie who had just solved a crime. She remained measured. Can you tell me what you understood the loan purpose to be? Home repairs. Do you recognize the business entity? I recognized the owner's name. I did not agree to secure his business. Another pause. I need to be precise, she said. The application file contains electronic authorization associated with your name. There is also a secondary email address listed for confirmation. What email? She read it to me. It looked like mine at a glance, but one letter had been added before the numbers at the end. Close enough to pass if someone was moving quickly. Not mine. I don't use that address, I said. I understand. I can note that authorization is disputed, but I'll need a written statement from you. I can provide the loan number and the appropriate contact for the review department. Is the loan approved? The application is pending final conditions. When is closing? I'm not able to discuss the entire file until identity and access issues are resolved. There is a signing appointment scheduled for next week. I heard Claire's key turn in the front door. I lowered my voice. Send the instructions to my verified email, not the address on the application. I will document the request. Julia, did my wife submit this? I can't characterize responsibility before review. That answer told me enough. Claire called from the hallway. Brandon, I have to go, I told Julia. Please send the written dispute as soon as possible. I ended the call as Claire appeared in the office doorway. Who was that? Insurance question. She watched me for a second. What kind of insurance question? I picked up the papers on the desk and straightened them. Nothing urgent. Her shoulders relaxed. Are you almost done in here? Why? I need the computer later. For the loan. Yes. She smiled, but it was too quick. We're almost at the finish line. I nearly confronted her right there. I wanted to say Ryan's name and watch her face. I wanted to demand the application, her phone, her explanation. I wanted to ask how my signature had ended up in a file I had never seen. But if I accused her before I knew what had happened, she could delete emails, move money, remove property, or build a story around my reaction. She had already told her mother I was controlling. If I shouted, threatened, or tried to seize her devices, I would hand her exactly what she needed. So I nodded. I still want to review the final terms. She walked behind my chair and rested her hands on my shoulders. I knew you'd come around. My stomach turned. That evening, I acted normal. We ate pasta at the kitchen table. Claire talked about the weather, a neighbor's new fence, and a show she wanted to watch. She laughed at something on her phone and turned the screen face down when I glanced toward it. I didn't sleep much. At 1:30 in the morning, after her breathing had settled into a steady rhythm, I got up and went to the office. The first thing I did was pull my credit information. There were recent hard inquiries tied to the home equity application. I saved screenshots, printed confirmation pages, and wrote down the dates. Then I searched our shared email account. The bank messages weren't in the inbox. They had been archived. There were reminders about outstanding conditions, notices that disclosures had been viewed, and one message saying an electronic signature package had been completed. I had never completed it. The confirmation had been copied to the secondary email Julia mentioned. One letter off. Close enough to fool a busy employee or a husband who wasn't expecting fraud. Not close enough to be mine. I checked the shared computer's files. Claire and I both used it for taxes, insurance, and household records, so I didn't need to break into anything. The documents folder had dozens of scans with vague names. I sorted by date. Near the top was an old insurance form from 3 years earlier. My signature was on it. A clean, high-resolution scan. I opened the loan disclosure attached to one of the archived emails and enlarged the electronic signature field. It looked like mine, but too perfectly. The slant, the loop in the B, the short line at the end, every detail matched the old scan. Even my real signature wasn't that identical twice. I took screenshots showing the file creation dates and printed the relevant pages. Then I backed them up somewhere Claire couldn't access. I kept searching. The loan purpose description on one document said residential improvements and debt consolidation. A later addendum used different language, business collateral support. Ryan's company appeared by name. The proposed amount was $85,000, not $75,000. I sat there for a long time staring at the number. $85,000 secured by our house, with my name attached, for a business I had never discussed and a man I had been told was no longer in my wife's life. The next morning, Claire asked why I looked tired. Couldn't sleep, I said. You worry too much. She kissed my cheek and walked away. After she left, I reviewed the joint account. At first, nothing jumped out. Mortgage, groceries, utilities, gas, normal spending. Then I filtered transfers. Every 2 weeks, relatively small amounts had gone out under vague labels. Consulting deposit, vendor support, and once simply project. $600, $800, $950. Never enough on its own to set off panic. Together, they totaled more than $12,000 over several months. I traced the receiving account name through transaction details available in our joint banking portal. It connected to Ryan's company. When Claire came home, I asked casually about one of the transfers. What's the consulting deposit from the joint account? She had just set her purse on the kitchen chair. Her hand paused on the strap. House planning. What does that mean? Someone helping with the financing and contractor coordination. Who? Can we not do this tonight? I'm asking about $900. It's for the house. She walked to the refrigerator and started moving things around without taking anything out. Is there an invoice? She shut the door. You make me prove everything like I'm on trial. It's a joint account. And it's my money too. Yes, which is why either of us should be able to explain a recurring transfer. She stared at me, jaw tight. I'm not doing this. Then she went upstairs. That was the moment the situation changed for me. Until then, part of me had still hoped there was some explanation I hadn't considered. Maybe Ryan's company had legitimately consulted on the loan. Maybe Claire had hidden his involvement because she knew I would object, but the signature was some technical mistake. Her answer killed that hope. She had looked me in the face and lied. I called my younger brother Colin the next day. I didn't tell him everything over the phone. I only said I needed him to come over while Claire was out and help me document property. He arrived with his usual impatient energy and a camera. What did she do? He asked as soon as the door closed. I need you to listen before you react. That sentence means she did something terrible. I showed him the loan documents, the account transfers, and the email address. He read in silence. By the time he reached the copied signature, his face had gone red. Call her right now. No. Brandon. If I confront her, she deletes what she can and says I threatened her. Then call the police. I'm following the bank's fraud process and speaking to a lawyer. You're being too calm. Calm means she doesn't get to say I threatened her. Colin paced once across the office and back. I know you want to be controlled, but calm doesn't mean letting her rob you politely. I'm not letting her. What are we documenting? We moved through the house, photographing serial numbers on electronics, and listing valuables purchased with joint funds. I felt ridiculous at first, standing in my own living room taking pictures of a television and speakers as though I were preparing an insurance claim. Then Colin crouched beside the office trash can. "Don't touch this," he said. "What?" He pointed to a folded receipt partly covered by shredded paper. "Photograph it before you touch it." The receipt was from a storage facility. Claire's name was at the top, along with a unit number and monthly charge. The rental had started 6 weeks earlier. I checked the joint account again. The storage payment wasn't there. She had paid with another account. I photographed the receipt, then put it back exactly where it had been. That evening, I looked around the house more carefully. A jewelry box that usually sat in the bedroom closet was gone. So was an older laptop we kept as a backup. Several decorative boxes Claire called seasonal clutter were missing from the basement shelves. I also noticed that our fireproof document case felt lighter. Claire had told me she was reorganizing. Now I wondered whether she was moving out one load at a time. The next morning, I called the storage facility. I didn't pretend to be Claire or try to gain access under false information. I explained that I was documenting potentially removed marital property and asked what information they could verify. The employee would only confirm that the unit number on the receipt existed and that access required the renter's authorization. That was fine. I gave the receipt to the attorney I had scheduled a consultation with, along with the property list. Through proper channels, the existence of the unit could be addressed. But I got my confirmation sooner than expected. 2 days later, Claire's sister Lauren called me. "Is Claire home?" she asked. "No." There was a pause. "Did she say anything about boxes?" "What boxes?" "I helped her move some seasonal stuff a few weeks ago. She said you wanted the basement cleared before repairs." "Where did you take it?" Another pause. "Storage." "What was in the boxes?" "I don't know. Decorations, I thought." "She had some electronics too." "Did she move jewelry?" "I didn't look through her things." "Did she move financial records?" Lauren's voice changed. "Brandon, what is happening?" "I'm trying to find that out." Claire told me it was just extra boxes. "Did she mention Ryan?" Silence. "Her ex?" "Yes." "No. Why would she?" "I can't explain yet. I'm not getting in the middle of bank paperwork." "I didn't ask you to. I'm asking you not to move anything else." She agreed, sounding more frightened than defensive. That afternoon, I received a message from the attorney's office confirming the steps I should take. I had already been told not to enter the unit without authorization, not to remove disputed property, and not to hide or transfer joint assets. The attorney arranged a formal preservation request and advised me to continue documenting anything missing. A few days later, through information produced for the initial financial review, we received an inventory Claire had submitted for insurance on the unit. The list was enough. Jewelry, electronics, personal files, collectibles purchased during the marriage, boxes marked financial, several pieces of art from the house, and one line that made my chest tighten: new apartment setup. When I asked the attorney whether that wording meant anything legally, she said, "It means we preserve it and ask questions. Don't jump ahead of the evidence." But emotionally, I had already jumped. The loan was not only about Ryan's business. Claire was preparing to leave. I found the clearest proof in an attachment Claire had accidentally saved to the shared computer. It was a budget spreadsheet titled New Start. The first column listed expected loan proceeds. The next rows included Ryan's business deposit, equipment lease support, apartment security deposit, first month's rent, moving costs, and 6 months of personal expenses. There was a note beside the apartment line, "After funds clear." Another note beside the house line said, "B handles existing payment until separation agreement." B was me. She planned to take money secured by our home, use part of it for Ryan, use part for her own apartment, and leave me carrying the existing mortgage while the new debt was sorted out. The worst part wasn't the spreadsheet itself. It was how carefully she had planned. Claire had calculated the cost of leaving me more thoroughly than she had calculated the cost of fixing the roof. I sat alone in the office, one hand over my mouth, trying to breathe quietly. Anger would have been easier. What I felt was humiliation. She had sat across from me at dinner, slept beside me, complained to her family that I was controlling, and hugged me after telling me the loan would make our life easier. All while building a budget for the life she intended to start after I signed. I didn't cry often, but I cried then. Not loudly. I just sat in the desk chair and let it happen while the printer hummed beside me. When I could see clearly again, I saved the spreadsheet with the rest of the evidence. Then I found Ryan's email. It wasn't in Claire's private account. It had been included in a forwarded chain attached to the loan file, probably because Ryan's company had provided supporting documents. The message was between Ryan and a business associate. Ryan wrote that Claire was handling the husband and expected to keep me cooperative through signing. He said once funding cleared, they could restructure the exposure if the business kept sliding. The next sentence was even worse. Claire will carry most of the personal risk. I just need the collateral support long enough to lock the equipment. I read it 3 times. Claire was betraying me. Ryan was using her. That did not make her innocent. It made the whole thing uglier. He wasn't planning a stable future with her. He needed her useful until the money arrived. She had convinced herself she was escaping a controlling husband with someone who understood her, while that man described her as a tool for managing me. I started acting that same day. First, I froze my credit with the major credit bureaus. Then I sent the bank a written statement saying I did not consent to the home equity loan, had not authorized the electronic signature, did not control the secondary email address, and disputed any attempt to use the property as collateral for Ryan's company. I included authentic signature samples from several dates, the old insurance scan, the loan signature, the email history, and the credit inquiry information. I sent a certified letter as well as the electronic submission. Julia confirmed receipt, but did not tell me what conclusion the bank would reach. The file is under review, she said. Because authorization is disputed, no closing can proceed unless the issue is resolved. Will Claire be notified? The applicants will receive status information according to procedure. Do not send anything to the false email. That address has been flagged. Next, I opened an individual account and redirected my personal income there. I did not empty the joint account. I left enough for the mortgage, utilities, insurance, groceries, and other necessary household expenses. I removed Claire as an authorized user from credit cards held only in my name. When one of those cards failed at a store, she called me immediately. Did you cancel my card? I removed authorized user access. You cut me off without warning. The joint account still has money. The household bills are covered. So now you're punishing me. No, I'm cutting off access to credit in my name. We're married. Access to my credit is not a marital right. There was a long silence. What is this really about? She asked. I looked at the phone. You know I've been uncomfortable with the loan. This is beyond uncomfortable. I'm protecting my credit while I review everything. You are unbelievable. She ended the call. That evening, she came home furious. She dropped her purse on the kitchen counter and stood across from me. You've been waiting for an excuse to do this. Do what? Control me completely. The joint bills are paid. That's not the point. What is the point? You decided, by yourself, that I don't get access to anything. I decided you don't get access to debt in my name. Her eyes narrowed. Are you backing out of the loan? I said I would attend the signing appointment. That answer calmed her, just slightly. You're still coming? Yes. She exhaled through her nose. Then why are you doing all this? I want clear boundaries until I understand the final terms. She crossed her arms. You make everything sound reasonable when you say it slowly. I almost laughed, but there was nothing funny about it. I'm not trying to win an argument. You always are. She went upstairs and shut the bedroom door. The next day, I met with the family attorney. I brought copies of everything. She reviewed the loan dispute, the transfers, the storage receipt, the property list, and the New Start budget. When she finished, she folded her hands on the desk. You need to stop thinking of this as a marital disagreement over spending. I already have. Good. You also need to avoid doing anything dramatic. I'm not planning to. No threats. No online posts. No hiding joint assets. No entering the storage unit. No shutting off essential expenses. Communicate in writing when possible. I understand. You do not need to win the argument in your kitchen, she said. You need the paperwork to survive review. We prepared a temporary financial boundary notice, a request for mediation, and a list of property requiring confirmation. The attorney also advised me not to reveal everything before the bank appointment. If she knows exactly what you have, evidence may disappear, she said. Let the bank complete its process. That was why I allowed Claire to believe the signing was still moving forward. It wasn't about creating a public spectacle. It was about stopping the transaction in the place where the transaction was supposed to happen, with the lender controlling the file and the fraud review already documented. Over the next few days, Claire's behavior changed. She became softer. She made my favorite dinner one night. She sat beside me on the couch and touched my arm while we watched television. She said she was sorry for involving her mother and admitted she had been stressed. "I'm glad you're finally choosing trust," she said. I looked at her. "Is that what you think this is?" "I think you're realizing we need to move forward." She leaned against me. "This is going to make everything easier. I think it will make things clear." She smiled as if I had agreed. The night before the signing, she stood in the hallway outside the office and reminded me of the time. 10:30, she said. "Please don't be late." "I won't." She hugged me. It felt rehearsed. As she walked away, her phone screen lit up in her hand. I saw only the beginning of a message before the screen turned. "He's coming." I didn't need to see the rest. The next morning, we drove separately. Claire said she had errands afterward. I suspected the real reason was that Ryan was nearby. She wore a dark jacket and carried a leather folder with the loan documents she had never shown me. In the lobby, she sat close enough that our knees almost touched. "You okay?" she asked. "I'm fine." "You look tense." "It's a large loan." She gave me a tight smile. "Let's just get this done." Julia came into the lobby and called our names. Her expression was professional, but when she looked at me, there was a brief recognition in her eyes. We followed her into a small office with glass walls. Claire sat beside me and placed her folder on the table. Julia logged into the file. "Before we proceed," Julia said, "I need to review the current status of the application." Claire opened her folder. "We already submitted everything." Julia looked at the screen. "The application cannot proceed to closing." Claire froze. "What?" "Authorization has been disputed by one of the listed property owners. The electronic signature and associated audit trail have been referred for fraud review. The loan is denied in its current form." Claire turned toward me. "What did you do?" Julia raised a hand slightly. "I need to keep this meeting focused on the application." Claire ignored her. "You did this." I rested my hands on the table. I reported that I never signed. Her face went pale, then red. "You said you were coming to sign." "I said I would attend the appointment." "You set me up." "No. You submitted my signature without permission." "That is not what happened." Julia spoke again. "The bank has received a written statement of non-consent, signature samples, and confirmation that the secondary email address is not controlled by Brandon. Because consent is disputed, we cannot proceed." Claire looked at Julia. "This is a misunderstanding." He agreed. I did not. "You knew we needed the repairs." "I agreed to review a home repair loan. I did not agree to secure Ryan's company." The name landed between us. Claire stopped breathing for a second. Then she looked toward the glass wall, toward the parking lot beyond the lobby. Julia's eyes returned to the screen. "There is also a linked collateral condition related to an equipment lease. That transaction has been paused because the required support is unavailable." Claire grabbed her phone. "You destroyed everything." I kept my voice level. "No. You tried to use our house for something I never approved. You could have talked to me. You could have asked for consent. You would have said no. That doesn't make forgery permission." She stood so quickly the chair rolled backward. Julia said, "Claire, please sit down." Instead, Claire called someone. "Come inside," she said when the call connected. Now, I knew who it was. Ryan entered less than 5 minutes later. I had not seen him in person before, only in old photos Claire once showed me. He looked less confident than those pictures. He came through the office door already angry, not concerned. "What happened?" he asked. Claire pointed at me. "He filed some kind of fraud claim." Ryan looked directly at me. "You were supposed to sign." Claire flinched. I said nothing. Ryan continued. "Claire said you were on board. I never spoke to you. She told me the house was basically hers anyway." "Ryan," Claire said sharply. "Stop talking." He looked at Julia. "I need to know if the lease is dead. Not are you okay? Not what did he accuse you of?" "The equipment lease." Julia stood. "Sir, you are not a listed borrower in this meeting. I cannot discuss account details with you. My company is tied to the collateral, and the collateral support is not proceeding." He turned back to Claire. You said you could handle him. Claire's mouth fell open. Don't put this on me. This whole thing only worked if he signed. There it was. No affection, no defense, no shared future. Just the deal. Claire looked at him as if she were seeing him clearly for the first time. I took out my phone and opened copies of the emails. Should I read what you wrote about keeping me cooperative? I asked. Claire's eyes snapped toward me. You went through my private messages? I found loan attachments on our shared computer and in the application record. That is an invasion of privacy. You used my signature. You don't understand the context. I opened the New Start budget. I understand the apartment deposit was scheduled after the funds cleared. Her face crumpled. Ryan stepped toward the table. What budget? Claire looked at him. Nothing. I turned the screen so both of them could see. $85,000 secured by the house. Business support for Ryan. Equipment lease deposit. New apartment. 6 months of expenses. And a note that I would keep paying the existing mortgage until separation. Ryan stared at the screen, then at Claire. You put all that in writing? Claire whispered. It was just planning. I looked at her. You didn't ask me to help fix our house. You asked me to finance the life you planned after leaving it. Her eyes filled with tears. I needed a way out. You needed my forged consent. You made everything impossible. I made blind debt impossible. Ryan was already backing toward the door. What happens to the money already transferred? He asked. Claire turned on him. Are you serious? I need to know what they're claiming. You told me we were doing this together. I told you the business needed funding. You said once it closed. Julia interrupted. This meeting is over. Any further communication regarding the application must go through the bank's review process. Ryan muttered something under his breath and left. Claire watched him go. She looked smaller when the door closed. Then she turned back to me. You waited until today because you wanted to humiliate me. I waited because you were still trying to use my signature. You could have stopped it privately. I did. I filed the objection privately. The bank scheduled this meeting before the file status was finalized. You let me walk in here thinking it was happening. Yes. Her expression hardened again. So this was punishment. No. This was the first place you couldn't delete the evidence, change the story, or tell someone I had agreed. Julia gave us both a quiet warning that the office needed to be cleared. I stood and left. Claire followed me into the parking lot. Ryan was several spaces away, pacing beside his car with his phone pressed to his ear. He did not look at her. Brandon, she said. I stopped beside my car. Her face was wet with tears, but her voice was furious. You destroyed my future. I opened the back door and took out an envelope. No, I stopped you from putting your future on my credit. What is that? Copies of the financial boundary notice, the mediation request, the property inventory, and my attorney's contact information. She stared at the envelope. You brought divorce papers to the bank. Not final papers. Notice that we're separating finances and discussing property through counsel. You planned all of this. I planned to protect myself after I found out what you planned. She took the envelope but didn't open it. I wasn't trying to ruin you. You were willing to risk the house and my credit. I knew you could manage the payment. That is not your decision. I felt trapped. You could have asked for a separation. You would have made it take forever. Then you hire a lawyer. You file. You leave. You do not copy my signature. She looked past me toward Ryan. He was still on the phone, gesturing angrily. He listened to me, she said. He wrote that you were handling me. Her eyes came back to mine. What? I saw his email to a business associate. He said you would carry most of the personal risk if the business kept failing. He only needed the collateral long enough to lock the equipment. She shook her head. No. I have the message. He wouldn't say that. He did. She looked toward him again. This time he turned away from her. I got into my car. Claire put one hand on the door before I could close it. Are you leaving me? I'm not making final decisions in a parking lot. That's not an answer. It's the only answer you get today. I closed the door and drove away. Diane called before I reached home. I let it go to voicemail. Her message began angrily. Brandon, Claire says you ambushed her at the bank and froze her out of everything. Whatever problems you two have, humiliating her in public is cruel. She says the loan was her only chance to leave safely. You need to call me. I did call her, but not to argue. Diane, I'm not going to discuss details while a bank fraud review is active. What exactly is under review? A signature I did not provide, a loan purpose I did not approve, and the use of the house as support for Ryan's company. She went quiet. Ryan. Yes. Claire said the loan was for the roof. That's what she told me too. She said you refused. I asked for estimates and terms. Are you saying she signed your name? I'm saying the bank is reviewing an electronic signature I disputed. You'll receive whatever Claire chooses to show you. I'm not debating it by phone. Brandon, I wish she had told you the whole story before you called me controlling. I ended the call. For the next week, Claire stayed with Diane. Communication went through email or attorneys except for necessary arrangements. She sent me several long messages. Some were angry. Some apologized. Most did both. In one, she wrote that she never intended to hurt me and only wanted enough money to leave without having to ask permission. I responded once. You never needed my permission to leave. You needed my consent to borrow against my share of the house. She didn't answer that directly. Ryan stopped responding to her within days. I learned this during a scheduled property discussion when Claire suddenly said, "He won't even answer me." I looked at the paperwork in front of us. That is between you and the person you chose to fund with our money. You know he manipulated me. I know he used you. I also know you lied to me for months. I thought he cared. You cared enough about what he wanted to forge my signature. She covered her face. I felt sorry for her. That was the hardest part. I could see that Ryan had exploited her resentment, praised her when she felt unheard, and sold her a future that depended on my assets. I could understand how my rigidity had created distance in our marriage. I could even understand why she wanted out. None of that changed what she did. At mediation, the numbers became unavoidable. The recurring transfers to Ryan's company were treated as Claire's use of marital funds and counted against her share. Items from the storage unit purchased with joint money had to be returned, sold, or credited. Personal jewelry remained hers, but electronics, artwork, and financial documents could not simply disappear because she had moved them first. Lauren provided a short statement confirming she had helped move boxes because Claire told her they were seasonal items. She refused to defend the signature issue. I love my sister, she told me privately during one property handoff, but I didn't know about any of this. Diane took longer. At first, she kept insisting Claire had been desperate. Then she saw the bank notice, the false email address, and the budget. Her next call was quieter. I wish she had told me the whole story, she said. So do I. I thought you were refusing basic repairs. I was refusing to sign without reading. She said you track every dollar. I do track our joint money. Diane sighed. I'm not saying what she did was right. You don't have to say anything to me. She's my daughter. I know. And you were her husband. I know that too. We didn't become friends. She didn't fully switch sides. She remained Claire's mother and believed my emotional distance had contributed to the marriage falling apart. But she stopped calling me abusive or controlling once she understood what had happened. The bank denied the loan permanently after confirming that I had not consented. The signature audit remained part of the disputed application record. I cooperated with every request for samples and statements. Ryan's equipment lease was canceled because the collateral support never materialized. His company did not collapse overnight in some dramatic, satisfying explosion. It simply remained what it had already been: unstable, underfunded, and dependent on money he couldn't secure on his own. He was asked to account for the transfers he had received. Through counsel, he claimed they were legitimate consulting payments. There were no useful invoices and very little evidence of actual work. I did not build my future around the hope that he would suddenly become honest. The marital settlement addressed the missing funds whether he repaid them or not. Claire's fantasy ended faster than our marriage did. Once the loan disappeared and questions about the transfers began, Ryan disappeared too. She sent me an email late one night. I know you probably hate me. Ryan was not who I thought he was. I understand now that he cared about the money. I am sorry for what I did. I was scared and angry, and I convinced myself you would never let me leave fairly. I know that doesn't excuse it. I just want you to know I did love you. I read the email in the home office. For a few minutes, I imagined responding the way the old version of me might have. I imagined asking her to come home, suggesting counseling, creating a plan with timelines and rules. Then I remembered sitting in the bank while she denied using my signature. I remembered the New Start budget. I remembered Ryan saying the plan only worked if I signed. I sent one response. I believe you loved me. I also believe you decided my consent was an obstacle you were entitled to remove. We will finish the divorce through the process already in place. At the property handover, Colin waited nearby as a witness. He didn't posture or threaten anyone. He stood by the entryway with the inventory while Claire and I checked items against the list. The older laptop came back. The artwork came back. Some electronics were credited against Claire's share because she wanted to keep them. Joint financial records were returned. A few missing items were assigned a value. Claire held a box of personal papers against her chest. "I'm sorry," she said. "I know. I really am. I believe you're sorry now." She looked down. "You made everything feel impossible, Brandon." I took a breath. I can own being hard to plan with. I can own making emotional problems sound like accounting problems. I can own the times I delayed decisions until you felt like nothing would ever move. She looked up, hopeful for 1 second. "But I won't own your decision to forge my signature," I said. The hope disappeared. I only wanted a way out. A way out does not require my signature. She nodded once. There was nothing left to argue. The final settlement allowed me to keep the house through a buyout. Claire's share was adjusted for the money transferred to Ryan and the property removed from the home. I still had to refinance, pay legal fees, and give up a painful amount of savings. Protecting myself did not mean walking away untouched. The roof was repaired a few months later. I got 3 estimates. That detail would have made Claire laugh once. The heating system was replaced too. The house felt strangely quiet after the work was done, as though even the walls had stopped waiting for another argument. On the Sunday after the divorce became final, I sat in the home office with the joint account closed and a new stack of bills on the desk. The receipt magnet was still on the filing cabinet. I removed the last of Claire's paperwork from a drawer and placed it in a box for storage. Not the kind meant to hide an exit, just the records of a marriage that had ended. I thought about whether I had been too calculated. Maybe letting her walk into the bank was cold. Maybe another person would have confronted her the day Julia called. Maybe part of me wanted Claire to feel the floor disappear beneath the plan she had built. But I also knew what would have happened if I had confronted her without protecting myself first. Evidence would have vanished. The loan might have been redirected. More property might have disappeared. The story about my controlling behavior would have hardened before anyone saw the documents. I did not empty our accounts. I did not stop paying necessary bills. I did not threaten her, expose her online, or destroy her belongings. I objected to debt I had not authorized, froze access to my credit, preserved evidence, and let the bank apply its own procedures. Claire was free to leave me. She was never free to take my consent with her. I used to think saving a marriage meant holding on long enough for the person you loved to come back. In the end, trust could not be rescued by signing one more paper, especially when my own signature had already been taken from me. If you like the stories, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.